It's the 21st of February. It's a little after 6 p.m. In the afternoon. This is the Streets and Sidewalks Committee, and to my right is Councilwoman Lynn Snee. Councilman Brock Heath, who is on this committee, is ill this evening, so he will not be with us. My name is Bob Phillips, as chair. Tonight, we're here to talk about the MVRPC Complete Streets, not project, but
Policy.
A policy, correct. And Mr. Davis, you're going to walk us through this?
Yeah, certainly, thank you.
Do we need to move now? Are you going to do a presentation?
Probably should, yes.
Okay, very good. Give us just a moment.
Take a second.
Well, I'll start off by saying that this process started in 2015. If you recall, we were a bicycle-friendly community, and one of the recommendations to further promote bicycling in the community was through adopting a complete streets policy, which is what is presented in front of you today. For those of you not familiar, Complete Streets is a comprehensive transportation network designed to accommodate all users of the road. So whether it's pedestrians, drivers, anybody else, it is supposed to bring a comprehensive plan together to further promote them. On here is kind of one of three maps that were included in your packet. So the maps were essentially, one is probably the most important, the Trail Connectivity Master Plan Map, Complete Streets. And what that does is it shows our layout of connectivity. Most of you are probably pretty familiar with the Adams Street bicycle lanes. That was kind of in the news earlier. That's a piece of the puzzle. It's a big piece of our puzzle because it connects the north to the south. It connects everybody to Archer Drive or to Archer Park. Also connects them to Duke Park, to the Troy Community Park, the Levee, and ultimately Treasure Island. So that's just one path of many that we have designated here. We did use a combination of share roads as well as off-street trails. Staff met with MVRPC several times to go through this process. We had proposed some items to them, received feedback, and implemented those suggestions to create this map. One of the things that it does with MVRPC, while it doesn't guarantee anything as far as a grant, it makes you very competitive when those grants are put in for and applied for. Typically, this was put into the comprehensive plan, and we wanted to call this out and get a resolution from council as part of the MVRPC requirements for a complete street program. So that's why it is before you today. The three maps, we talked about this one being one, the other two. One is a thoroughfare improvement map, which we have on the wall. And the other one is the thoroughfare classification map. So you would know kind of differences of major, minor arterials, local roads, things of that nature. So what we've done, we actually visited a bicyclist activist group called Yay Bikes out of Columbus. Several staff members and myself went to Columbus and rode on High Street in the middle of rush hour during lunch. So if we decided that if we could survive that, we could have something similar to that in Troy. And we actually brought Yay Bikes here as we had some council members and some members from our bicycling community ride some of our proposed trails on an afternoon, and I thought it went very smooth. So we're pretty happy with the plan, and ultimately our goal is for connectivity of bicyclists and other users throughout the community.
Okay, particularly with the trail plan that we have up here, is there anything, well, first of all, the legend lower left down there, can you kind of explain to the people that may be viewing this, that probably can't read that lower left legend, that
Yes.
may be reading it? Can you explain the red dotted lines, this red solid lines, and I think those are the two major things that folks would need to know what they are.
Certainly. The red dotted lines are proposed trails. You'll see those are kind of off street. What we did, we looked at how much right of way we had. We looked at traffic. We looked at speed, things of that nature. As far as safety, And west of 75 here, you can see the red. That would be a proposed trail that would be off the street, would not be a share road, which is a little arrow on the road. The green, which dominates most of the map, those are share roads. We feel like a lot of our roads could be ridden up on with simply pavement markings. And then we have existing maps, existing trails, which are your solid red lines, which of course go around Duke Park. It connects what we currently have in store today.
Okay. And any of the new bike connectors, if you will, that would have to be painted or lined or something, is there any actual construction or paving projects that would need to be done?
I guess I should have pointed this out earlier. This is a long-term vision, so this will be over 20, 30 years. I mean, this will not appear on the streets tomorrow.
Right.
So kind of our goal is, as we are preparing to do road improvements, we would implement this map and these concepts to that. The plan is expected to be reviewed every 2 years. We realize that it's a plan. It could change, traffic patterns change, which would change our map. So it will be reviewed every 2 years to keep up with the changes. But
Do we have any numbers on what our bicycle population is? How much usage out of total vehicles and that sort of thing? How do we measure that, and what are bicycles in that number?
we probably do. I do know we did some bike counts on the current trails we have. As far as on the road, I don't know if I have any for you. I can certainly get, I know when we applied for the bronze status, we did provide some information. I don't have that in front of me, but I'm sure we can get you some type of information. We do have very active bicyclist clubs that utilize our roads, but I don't have specific numbers.
Mr. Chair, MVRPC did acquire a couple of counters, actual physical counters, and we were one of the first to get those on loan. So there were a couple of sections of the recreation trail, one at the golf course and one, I can't remember exactly where it was. Stan Kegley would know that. We did, I don't want to misquote numbers, but it was significantly higher than what we had thought and what MVRPC thought. We can email that information to you.
Okay. Well, in addition to that, do we have any trail usage versus what uses the actual city streets that are shared with vehicles? Any numbers?
We've not done anything other than anecdotal.
Just on the trails?
Correct.
Account.
You're right.
If you will.
Correct.
And for the next, for any of the levels, the miles are a very important number of how many miles we have to graduate up to next levels of standards, if you will.
Yes, it is. We can get that for you. I don't have that broken down on here simply because we didn't want to put a false number on there. If it would change, it would obviously change the mileage. So that's kind of why it was left off this map. But yeah, that's something we can easily do with our GIS capabilities.
Mrs. Nee?
I guess just a question so that I'm understanding again about these legends. You have the green dotted lines marked as share the road. So that obviously means there's some kind of bike lane markings.
Yeah, be pavement markings, yes.
So obviously on Adams Street, that's the width of a car lane. That's not what you're anticipating everywhere on that share the road.
It may not be everywhere. Like I said, in some areas we have different right-of-way areas and widths that we can mess with. They do have a requirement of what they have. We would follow the national guidelines of bicyclists facilities. We have those guidelines. That's what we would follow for the standard. So we would be compliant with the national requirements.
And just to follow up on your question, the Adams Street bike lane is actually a two-way bike lane. Typically, you'll see one way on each side of the road.
Well, and I guess that's where I was going. Is there some width on every one of these proposed share the road sections of this where there would be some dedicated, whether it's one side or both sides, for bicycles?
Well, it can be aligned. It can be a dedicated bike lane But share roads can also just be a simple bike marking. It depends on the congestion, the traffic patterns, et cetera. But typically, a minimum width of a bike lane is, I believe, 10 feet. Is that what we use, or did they change that?
I believe it's 10 feet.
10 feet. So that's why the Adams Street is much wider, because both lanes are on the
On one side.
on the west side. Yes.
Okay.
But-
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go.
But the 10 feet, that's for 2-lane on one side,
No, that's for one lane. That's each lane.
but for each
That's
direction.
5 lane.
It would be two. It would be for
5
two.
lane. 5 feet per lane. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hypothetically, with let's use Adams Street because we're all familiar with it. If we had a bike lane on each side and there was no traffic there, that could be a shared roadway.
Yes.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
So share roads, just to clarify, share roads, you wouldn't actually have to take that away from any lane. It would be a part of that lane.
Correct.
So, yeah. just wanna-
Because the bicyclists have to obey the laws as the same vehicle code.
So your local streets, they're pretty much share roads.
So you're saying then that 5-foot width that would be marked bicycles could be a part of the width of the vehicle lane?
It would not be
Okay.
marked. If it's marked with a solid white line, then it is a dedicated
Mm-hmm. It is
bike lane that
dedicated.
you can't get
Okay.
into.
And that would not be...
Share roads are where on a local road in a subdivision, for example, you're not going to have marked lanes. The bike just shares the road with the vehicle and vice versa.
Okay, so then Adams Street is marked as a share road. I guess I'm trying to understand. My only question is that so much of Main Street coming through downtown is marked as a share road.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And then at some point, we do want to get off of the road if possible, as you see as you're
Going further
northwest. A share road can be a marked bike lane. It can also just be part of the vehicular lane. Depends, again, on the classification of the road and the amount of traffic and a variety of factors.
If you're wondering if all the lanes are going to look like Adams Street, that would not be a good representation of it, because that is a separate lane. It's not a typical, that's a separate lane. It's not a typical share road.
and right, so I guess then I'm trying to picture even coming further down Adams Street as you come to the bridge, there's vehicular lanes and a bicycle lane on each side, correct?
South of Riverside, there is not on Adams Street. As you continue towards Main Street,
Okay, I guess I thought that we
Once
had
you
made the
pass
bridge
the
wide enough to
intersection.
have a bike lane on each side.
Yeah.
there's not. When you get across and right in front of Community Park, there are not.
No, I think I was thinking on the
Dedicated
bridge
bike
itself.
On the Adams Street Bridge, it's actually on the sidewalk. It's a
sidewalk.
wider
On the
sidewalk.
On the
It's not
sidewalk,
on
with
the
a wider
actual lane.
sidewalk.
That's
Okay.
correct. And that was engineered that way.
If there are lane markings for a bike lane, that is a dedicated bike lane and is not to be driven in by vehicles, even though there may be a portion that is shared by a vehicle lane.
That's correct.
However, if there are no bike lane markings, then it is absolutely shared, and the bicycle must drive to the right and obey all the laws just as they would normally. But that would be a dedicated lane that a vehicle would not be in if it is marked and painted.
All right.
Does that clear up any?
On Elm Street, just north of Wendy's, there are bicycles painted in the road, so I'm assuming that is a shared road right there. So the bikes can be in the road with the car. Who has the right of way?
Which they can now. Those indicators just provide a little bit of caution, if you will, for drivers to remember that, there's going to be bicyclists around. Typically, you'll see those where they're close to the off-road trails, so that people know that, hey, there may be some people bicyclists converging to get onto the path.
It's just a warning to the cars, hey, you might see bikes here on the road.
That's correct.
Or the bikes, it could be, say to the bikes, hey, you can be on the road with the cars right here.
Yes,
Both ways.
although they can always be there's no prohibition against bikes being on the road.
Well, I know what Lynn is talking about on the bridge, because there are those white painted lines. So between those white painted lines and the curb, what space is that?
Well, the bicycles on the bridge are supposed to be up on the
Are they along the railing or
sidewalk
the other
lane.
way?
Just shoulder.
Just shoulder, yeah.
I know what Lynn's talking about, though. It's kind of, you think that's a bike lane. Because on Adams Street, it's a solid white line, so you think it's a bike lane there on the bridge.
Hang on just a second. Mrs. Rhodes, do you have some clarification points that you want to bring up?
No, it's just shoulder. So there, it just is following ODOT standard design, and so ODOT requires 4 foot of shoulder. So between that white line and the sidewalk, the curb is just shoulder. I do agree that in some instances, especially if you go to higher populated cities, Columbus that has very well, they have a lot of bike lanes, a lot of share roads, a lot of, pavement markings, that 4 feet could be a typical bike lane, but it isn't on Adams Street. And I would encourage, one of the things that we want to standardize on as we move forward and implement this further is that when we talk about the bike lanes on Elm Street is to put those, there are recommendations in the manuals to say put them every so many feet, kind of thing, and paint that and maintain that pavement marking so that that's education for the driver as well as the bicyclist saying, hey, be aware you're sharing the road. Now, when you talk about dedicated bike lanes, it's not as, so it's more education and information for the bicyclist saying, hey, you can ride here safely without vehicles supposedly driving.
Well, that could be a routing issue also, because from Adams Street up onto the bridge, the bicycles actually get off of the road and up onto the sidewalk, if you will.
Yeah. So, and one of the things that we kind of that we need to clarify there between Adams Street at Staunton and Riverside to the Adams Street Bridge is what is that designated lane? There's not asphalt there. So, Community Park's right there, but we just haven't done it, if you want to say, any exits for bikes and then entrances back on
Right.
at Adams Street.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I add?
Mrs. Sneed, did you have any other question? Or?
Not right now.
Okay. Mrs. Oda, please.
The getting on the sidewalk there is a little confusing because we're telling bicyclists they're not allowed on the sidewalks. So then to tell people on the bridge you're supposed to be on the sidewalk, it's a little bit contradictory.
Well, we've got to actually go back out and measure the bridge itself because it is a wider sidewalk, and at one point it did have markings on the bridge. They may have been temporary, they may not have been. We're going to talk to the county engineer. They're the ones that designed that bridge. There is sufficient space on the road, especially at the bridge, even from Staunton south to Main Street, against the curb or within a few feet of the curb, that bikes can safely travel, especially when it's 25 miles an hour and people have slowed down coming through the four-way stop, blinking stop. So we're not as concerned about that. We do not direct people onto the sidewalk at Community Park, because you're right. Technically they're not supposed to bike on the sidewalk. But as you get closer to the bridge, there are people that just, I do it all the time. I'll just ride next to the curb on the road itself, and I don't feel unsafe. And then once you get beyond the bridge, then we do have a curb cut that you can get on to the path through the. Yeah, you have to kind of do a U-turn, but then you get on the path.
Is there any reason why Adams Street can't be a shared lane instead of having a dedicated lane?
Yes, because we felt that, and when we talked to NVRPC, they confirmed it, that with the amount of traffic, with the fact that the junior high school is there, and we do get quite a bit of traffic there, that there needed to be some designation to safeguard not only the cyclists, but we do have quite a few joggers, runners that run there as well. And since we wanted to keep that that traffic on the opposite side of the road from the actual school, so that we didn't complicate things even more. We definitely wanted to have that white line there.
Any other comments from other council? Mrs. Baker?
A couple of things. I also am concerned with the West Main Street share the road, or encouraging bicycles to share that road. With the city growing and the increase in traffic, that strip of road gets pretty congested a lot of times, and they're going 35, 40 miles an hour coming in there. And I think it's scary to encourage bicycles to share that strip of road at this particular time. Now, should we be able to do some widening of that, that might be a different thing then, but there's not, in some areas along West Main Street, there's not a lot of space to widen that. So I think in one of the implementation statements here on the document that we received, it says that the project's to ensure one mode of transportation does not prevent the safe use by another mode. And I think that's going to be a key to making this whole thing successful, is that we keep in mind that that's really a heavily traveled area of roadway. And to encourage bicyclists to be along there is, I think, a dangerous situation at this point in time. Question, we also stated in this document that we provide training and education for staff, elected and appointed officials, and citizens to continue to promote the goals included in this policy. Is there any plan on how this would be achieved as far as the education segment of it?
Yeah, the education segment could come in different forms through our Facebook, social media, things of that nature. We do have the Troy Daily News that we could do advertisements in for newspapers and things of that nature. We have a section on our webpage that has articles that we put on that we would constantly upload that. And if we needed to, we could always do a mailing, kind of like we did with the when the refuse changed over. If we felt the need for that, that would be another option. So that's one. One of the things we always want to take into consideration when looking at the bikes is the safety factors that come into play. For example, for those reasons you cited, west of 75 is why we wanted to have a separate lane to get them off of the street. There's a lot of things to look at, one being curb cuts. You have a lot of those in certain areas which can kind of be dangerous. So having those, and having ridden, one of the things we did was ride on West Main Street with the bike company from Columbus. And anybody else can speak. I mean, I didn't feel unsafe at all when I was on West Main Street. And I was in the morning group, so I was out there about 10:30, 11, kind of when we thought we'd just get the lunch crowd out there. But that is why we kind of have taken off and went to the off trail past 75. And when we do improvements, we hopefully can obtain more right-of-way in certain areas if we need it. So, and that's one of the items we have this plan for. If we apply for a road improvement and ODOT has to do it because they would be involved on 41. For example, the bridge, if they're going to redo the 75 interchange, and we say we want to have an off-site bike trail there, right now we have nothing to go back and say, well, that's part of our plan. We would have something to go back now and say, look, we really need this additional because we have this plan in place. So I guess that would be my answers to your questions.
Okay, and then one other question. It's been mentioned, not necessarily or not specifically in this document, but the city is striving to get to the next level with the silver bike community status. What or how does that benefit the city? What do we get from having another, I mean, other than just the recognition, what does that give us? Silver status, what would that give the city?
Well, I think you hit it. The biggest thing I can think of is probably the notification that we are a silver status, but it's also encouraging, and then that can hopefully lead to other opportunities. I know once again, going in form of grants and different things of that nature, when you obtain a different level from a bronze to a silver. So as far as maybe grant money, things of that nature, we can apply for a lot more, not only through NVRBC, but nationally. If you are in the category, you have opportunities to more funds than you do just being a bronze if you are a silver status.
And I guess to follow up with that, the fact that we would be silver would put us into a pretty elite group, and where that benefits us is through just national recognition, statewide national recognition, which goes back to the whole idea of quality of life, enhancing the amenities that we have. It's just one more thing for us to be recognized, given that, recreation, the riverfront development, trying to get that workforce and those families back into Troy to support the businesses. It's an indirect way, but it's a way that just continues to promote the community.
Thank you.
Mr. Terwilliger, questions, comments?
No. Serving as the chairperson of the mayor's committee on our bike-friendly thing, the activities. To achieve the silver is important, but it's not the sole purpose of our committee or our activities. Part of it is the process, and part of that process is a variety and a different encompassing of philosophies, like the roads. Everything is going to change based on environment and terrain. There are certain parts of Troy, it's cake. It's straight, it's wide, it's very workable. We go west, it's interesting. There are a lot of challenges. But if the plan is in place and we prove to people at the next step that we're looking that direction, that is what they want to be impressed by. Part of our element, a component of our element on this silver status is an education process. And we have recently spoken with the fire department and the police department in a helmet program, a medical identification program, and these programs are going to be outreached to kids, to scouts, so that we can provide an educational riding, learning experience. I hear exactly what you're saying about the excitement of trying to pedal on west of Troy. But if we, and those of us who did the Yay ride, there were moments when we said, I don't know that I necessarily want to be doing this, but we found by following the proper education that was provided to us by the leaders from Columbus, it's not quite as spooky, but there certainly is a component of education, which we as a committee and we as a city and we as a bike community need. Also, part of this is an economic part. There are some opportunities coming up this summer with significant numbers of people coming to our community that can enhance our community socially, economically, maybe in some personal relationships that persons can use then in the business sector, in expanding. The medal's important, but the process to get there and the educational and safety and developmental process of that search for the medal is a big part of what we're after too.
Thank you, John.
Anyone else in the audience have any comments, questions that they'd like to address here? Or have? Yes, come on up, Mr. Steepster. Please state your name for the record there.
Jerry Steester, 2081 South Greenlee Road, Troy. I do have a property on West Main Street, and looking at the cover sheet, on the paperwork, it looks like about 20 feet of space. A curb lawn, 5 feet, a sidewalk 5 feet, a bike lane 5 feet, and then another curb lawn, but 15 to 20 feet of space. My property on West Main Street, from the curb to the wall at my flower bed, is 18 feet. To the house is 20.6. So using 15 or 20, I guess, back to the safety feature, how are we going to plug all these people into, the limited amount of space? I think the other thing, and we do bike, we own bicycles, is the safety factor. I know on the Adams Street bike lane, there, if you study biking, a little bit I've done, how do we turn cars left and cars right and bikes left and bikes right? Because right now you come to the stop sign, the bicycle in the curb lane wants to go to the stadium or the school, they got to make a left turn across traffic. And you got a 3,000 to 5,000 pound vehicle and a 25 to 50 pound bike and a rider. So I think there's some safety concerns there that the bike culture would like to see bikes sold and bikes ridden. The safety, I think sometimes that may be neglected, of the safety features that go along with promoting the future. I think the other factor that, as we look at the transfer of people into the future and the use of our roads and our byways, is what do we do with the wheelchairs, the power carts, the power scooters? Where are they going to go? Because they're, the segways, where are we going to run them? So there's, I guess that's one aspect I didn't see addressed in the report. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Mr. Mayor? In fact, Mr. Davis, that's an important question about segues and that sort of thing eventually down the road. I mean, I didn't see anything in here. Is there some information or vision?
Probably the information I would say is that's why it's a plan. We propose it to be reviewed every 2 years. If that does increase, or even technology we haven't thought of today comes along, then we should certainly tailor our plan to address those needs and concerns.
All right, thank you. Did we want to address any of the additional maps, the roadways or the trails, or any, other than this? Is there any need?
I think there's a need. I think you guys have those for packets. They are hanging up here. If you had any questions.
Anything different than the information that's already come out that applies to them?
It's all the same.
Okay, all right. Mrs. Sneed, do you have any particular questions about the other two?
No, not about the other two maps, just one overall question.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Since this would be adopted as a policy, and in here it says the policy applies to all projects, including new construction, rehabilitation, repair, resurfacing, and maintenance of transportation network facilities, would you anticipate that you could have a project, say, out on West Main Street that would be addressed as you looked at it prior to something that would cause the connection from downtown to West Main Street to be addressed? In other words, I guess I'm saying, and I understand it's a plan, and overall it looks great if everything could just be existing that way at once and addressed, but that's not going to happen. So I guess I'm wondering how we're going to deal with the connectivity when projects are in different places throughout the city.
Well, there certainly may appear to be some disconnect in the short term if a project in one area is done prior to another one, because we're not going to spend money on a section of road that doesn't need to be or is scheduled for a few years later. But you mentioned West Main Street, for example. We are having an engineer team look at that project, and they are looking from downtown out to 75. And so they will be looking at these types of alternative transportation. Is there right of way? Is it, what is the best recommendation given what we have, the parameters we have, and the potential costs? And so, as we move forward, we are going to try to segment rationally and expand out where we can. As we are doing our annual road repaving project, we are looking at these things as part of that. For the most part, they would be share roads since there's a lot of local sections that we do. And so, the wholesale change, we really don't see that happening in the short term anyway.
That was all I had.
Okay, thank you. Any other information that needs to be come before the committee? Yes,
Another
ma'am.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
So on Main Street from downtown to 75, are you looking at a shared street or are you looking at bike lanes?
We are waiting for the study to be done. So I can't say yes or no. It really depends on, what they think we need to do or can do with utilities. Do we have right-of-way to widen the roads, to widen the lanes for vehicular traffic, because there are some narrow lanes there in certain areas. And then beyond that, do we look at share roads? Do we look at dedicated bike lane and the like? We just don't know yet.
Is that a part of the Wolpert study?
It is part of the Wolpert study.
Do you have a timeline on off of the draft?
For the West Main study, I believe fall, winter time. It's a long story, or a long study. Long story.
8 to 10 months ish.
Ish.
Okay.
Yes.
And this does not require emergency legislation?
No, sir.
Mr. Kendall, you come in. Do you have any questions about the complete streets or anything? Very good. Mrs. Snee, what is your recommendation on?
I would say we move forward.
Okay. It's a unanimous decision by the committee to proceed as staff is recommending on this item. Any other items to come before the Street Sidewalks Committee? All right, then we are adjourned, and thank you all for coming today.